Well, our podcast is on your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Okay. Very cool.
Cool. So are you in LA?
No, I'm in Nashville actually.
Oh, dope. We're moving to Nashville in like 2 weeks.
No kidding.
Yeah. What part of Nashville are
Wow.
you in?
East Nashville.
Okay. Right on. We're moving like
Yeah.
south, to like right around Franklin Thompson Station.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wow,
So
man. What's bringing you here?
just everything music wise. I mean, we're in San
Yeah.
Diego and I just feel like we just need we need to change the scenery. And I talked to so many
Mm.
people that are in Nashville, man. It's like,
Oh man. I feel like all of California is eventually going to end up here. It's just
right?
because it's the thing is, it's like I've always compared Nashville to like a miniature Los Angeles.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, at least that's how it's ending up. I mean, the last 10 years, it's astronomical of how it changed. But yeah, the thing is, it's just a lot cheaper. Here's the deal: you're not going to get an ocean, but it's going to be
Yeah.
that much cheaper to live.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
kind of
Exactly.
give and take. But
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, I think you'll dig it, man. Yeah.
We're really excited. Yeah, we'll be down there. We're gonna build a studio and stuff in the house. So once everything's opened up again, we can do this in person.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well,
Yeah.
definitely let's keep in touch
Yeah.
when you get here.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. Cool. So you're in Nashville. Were you from Nashville originally? Or like tell me where you were born and raised.
I was born and raised in Ohio, in a town called Defiance, um,
Oh,
which is
really?
it's a little south of Toledo.
Okay.
It's actually it's my town that I was born in was actually it's been in like there's been a couple movies
I
where
think
it,
there's
like
a band called Defiance, Ohio.
yeah, there actually is, which is funny. I actually talked to their lead singer because I thought he might have been from that area too. I ran
Right.
into him once and he had it actually has nothing to do
With living there?
with that town. Yeah, it's just weird.
That's
Like he's like, yeah,
interesting.
I've heard of that place, but I
That's
can't remember
funny.
what specifically his band's the name's based off of. But yeah, so there's been like a Woody Harrelson movie was filmed there and
That's
took place
cool.
there. So
How far
yeah,
is
it's
that
just
from like Cleveland? Because my family is originally from Cleveland. I wasn't born or raised in Cleveland,
oh,
but
I
my
was
uncles and aunts and stuff.
probably a couple hours
Oh,
west of
okay.
Cleveland. Yeah,
Right on. Right on. That's
yeah.
awesome. So tell me about how is Defiance, Ohio? Like, was there a music scene there? Like, tell me about that.
No, I mean it was just like I guess like any typical small town, there might have been a handful of bands. And it was it was literally like one of those cases like you've always it's a cliche, but you've always heard of it, I'm sure, when you're like kind of a big fish in a small pond, and then you come to
Hmm.
a place like Nashville and you're just like a minute little minnow,
Right.
in an ocean.
Sure.
But yeah, so it was huge. I must say that when I was in Ohio, I tended to be a bit cocky because I was
Hmm.
like, yeah, man, this is because here's the thing. When I got out of high school, I was making like I think $230 every weekend, like for 2 nights, because I was playing with these older guys who were kind of like my mentors.
Hmm.
And so they were sneaking me into bars at like 17 years old, and I was making like $230 for a couple nights gig. And like my buddies were like bussing tables and like working at McDonald's and stuff and making like nothing.
Nothing.
And I was
Yeah.
just like, so to me, I was like, this is my life. This is how it's going to be till I die.
Hmm.
I had no idea. I had no idea there's more to life than playing cover bands at a really crappy bar. But yeah, I just at the time I thought, yeah, this is great. But then when I came to Nashville, I was just like, okay, I'm starting over. I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
because it's one of those things in Nashville too. It's like you throw a stone and you hit like 20 guitar players that are like so much more amazing than you, and songwriters that are so astronomical. I mean, there's guys that live in the streets that are have more talent in their finger than most people you'll ever meet. So it's just a crazy scene here, man. I think you're gonna dig it.
We're really excited. That's awesome. Well, so that band you were in at home, that was a cover band, the one that would play on the
Yeah,
weekends. Okay.
yeah,
Then how did you get into music? I mean, yeah, originally, was your family a musical family, or how'd you get into music?
yeah. Well, my dad kind of tinkered around with the guitar, so he had like a couple guitars around the house as growing up. So I was always intrigued by that. And so my dad was a big bluegrass fan because he's from Eastern Kentucky, and
Okay.
my mother out to Texas, so she had a big country music sort of was in her DNA. And so yeah, when
Sure.
I was growing up, man, it was constantly like country music, classic country music, like Waylon Jennings and and Johnny Cash and
Mhm.
Merle Haggard. And my dad would have like Bill Monroe and all these classic Stanley Brothers. And then they would get together and they would bring, Janis Joplin, CCR records. So it's like I had so much music going on around me. And of course, as I got older, I rebelled because none of that stuff was cool. And
Right.
so I got really deep into like hard rock and metal and you know just just trying to. But I mean, now it's like I love it all. Looking back on it, especially being in Nashville, I was surprised how much the country thing really is influenced. I mean, you don't necessarily need to be a country fan. I think the city itself inspires you, and whatever's
Right.
going
I
on in the
mean,
city is what inspires all those great country songs from all the way back to Hank Williams forward.
I was
But
gonna say those are like the pioneers of all the songwriting and everything too,
oh
right?
yeah, I lived in a place down here. I'm in East Nashville now, but I lived in my first spot in East Nashville. I lived there for about 10 years, and there's like 2 or 3 houses down from me. And it was so unassuming. It was just a little, I think they rent it out monthly now, but just a small little 2-bedroom cottage style home a couple doors down from me, where a lot of the Patsy Cline songs were written. And people like
Wow.
yeah, it's like this little house, people like Roger Miller, Harlan Howard, and Nelson, and Patsy, of course, they used to hang out there, have beers, and write songs. So stuff like that happens everywhere around there. That's what I'm saying. Like every little house, there's stories. Like there's a house about a mile or two down the road from where I live now. Linda Ronstadt used to record vocals in some dude's shower. So there's history all over the place around here. It's nuts.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Okay, so guitar was the first instrument you learned then?
definitely. Yeah, I fell in love with that. I mean, that's definitely the love of my life. That's what got me into music in general. And I had an aunt that played guitar, and I kind of reluctantly started taking guitar lessons just because my parents were want me to get into it and I guess pursue something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I started taking guitar lessons, and but it was against my will, sort of. I mean, I dug it, but I wanted to like play. I wanted to be Bruce Springsteen or Eddie Van Halen, and
Right.
this guy was making me play like all these
Scales and
yellow
crap.
yeah, that and Yellow Rose of Texas and like all these cowboy songs from like just the campfire songs. And I was like, man, this is so boring. So I never practiced. So my parents were like, if you don't start practicing, we're taking you out. I was like, good. I don't want to play anyway. So
Yeah.
my aunt left me a guitar. She passed, and she left me a guitar. And I was just like bored. And I remembered I had the guitar in a case under my bed, and I got it out. And this was like a year or two after my aunt had passed, and she had like a little note she left me in the guitar case
Mm-hmm.
saying, this is my guitar. I want you to have it. And it'd be so cool if we had somebody in our family that could play guitar, eventually maybe even write a song with it. And
Mm-hmm.
that changed my life. I found that note, I picked up that guitar, and I've not put it down ever since.
Wow. That's
Mm.
that's crazy. So how old were you when you actually started writing songs?
Oh gosh. I mean, I don't know if you would call it writing songs. I mean, I wrote songs when I was like probably in my teens, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but they were obviously horrible. I mean, I'm still learning right now how to write songs, but um, I guess it was probably late teens when I started kind of sort of throwing my idea of what it was to write a song into the hat. But I think that it's ever going, man. I think it's me or something. Like I don't know. I guess I hope I never get to the point where like, yeah, I know how to write a song because I'm still figuring it out, But
Sure.
I, and honestly, it wasn't probably for the last 5 years where I felt like confident in a song. I could write a song and be confident in it.
Oh wow. So
Yeah,
not that, yeah, pretty recently then. I mean,
pretty
five
much.
years. I mean, not that recently,
Yeah.
but I guess
Well,
wow.
within the last decade for sure,
Yeah.
But
Well,
like I said, I write things. Heck, last night or the night before last, I wrote a song. And I was like, this is amazing. And then I woke up the next day, I'm like, this is horrible. So, it's just, I'm still going through that. And I think we all do probably.
sure, sure, sure. Well, you said you were in that cover band. Were you writing songs prior to being in the cover band? Were you like in a band with your peers at school or anything like that? Or was it, how'd you get into the cover band?
Yeah. Um, just kind of I think it was like an ad in the paper or something. No, it was an ad at a guitar store, a local guitar store. I answered. But yeah, I did the whole high school band thing, which is fun.
How was,
But it all covers, and I think at the time, if I was right, I'm sorry, what is it?
sorry, you stopped for a second. So
What'd
I
you say?
wanted to make,
Oh no, I was just gonna say, as far as writing songs back then, I think they were more. instead of original, they were more elaborate rip-offs of songs that I had been playing in the cover band, So,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I think a lot of songwriters though go through that. They kind of start out emulating before they're actually being original and creating.
Sure.
And I still see a lot of that. Like there's some great artists that I know personally. I would never drop the names, but they make great Bruce Springsteen music.
Right.
They make great Allman Brothers songs, but you're still looking for them, and I think they're still searching for their voice too. So I
Mm-hmm.
think you got to go through that before you can have a solid identity as a songwriter. You're just kind of finding your way. So yeah, it took me years of just writing Beatle rip-off songs and trying to sound like Eddie Van Halen or whatever.
Sure. That's cool. Well, then so did Nashville, why Nashville? Is it just because you were like, I need to get to another town that has a bunch of music in it and
Yeah, that
Toledo
played a
isn't the
part of it.
place, or
Yeah, that played a
Defiance?
part of it for sure. Yeah, I think. Well, I lives actually south of Nashville in Smyrna, a little town about 20 minutes south of Nashville, and I came to visit him, and of course, at the time, I was just like everybody. I was like, "Oh, what's country music? I'm not going to fit in there. It's just nothing but country."
Right. That's how I would
And
feel
I
right
spent about a
away,
week here. Yeah, everybody does, and it's so crazy because once you get here and start to see, which is what I did. I even back then, that was a different time back then, but even more now. But I was like, man, this is really cool. And it's one of those things like you can go anywhere in town and listen to six bands. You know what I mean? Or at least pre-COVID, obviously.
My wife and I flew out a couple weeks ago to, check out where we're going to live and stuff. And like
Yeah.
right when you get off the plane, it's like there was a guy playing in one of the bars in the airport, like right
Yeah.
away. I'm like, I've never seen a live guy like playing or, a live
Oh
person
man.
performing in an airport like that before at just like one of their restaurants. It was like
Yeah,
blew
isn't
my
that
mind.
awesome? It's never. Yeah, you're never gonna see. I mean, for once, this is a funny story. A few years ago, I don't think I think it stopped, but a few years ago, there was a McDonald's in the west part of town that had live music. Like you walk into a McDonald's, there'd be three singer songwriters up there taking turns performing.
That's cool.
So yeah, so yeah, man, you see some weird things in the most unexpected places around here.
Sure. How funny. So once you get to Nashville, like, tell me about working on your first record, To Become More Immortal and Then Die. Was that done when you had got to Nashville?
No, that was made probably a dozen years after I'd been here. That was the first kind of outing as myself, whereas everything else had been with bands.
Oh, okay. So you're
Um,
in bands in Nashville for a while prior to doing a solo
yeah,
record.
yeah, probably for 10 years or so, at least a decade. I was in different bands. I was in a band called Mellow Down, and we were signed for a while with Dualtone Records, which is a
Oh,
local label
wow.
here.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was in a band called Lions for Real, which that was I wasn't singing, I was just playing guitar, and I helped write a lot of the songs. And we had a little run, and then after that is when To Be Immortal came out, and but that was one of those albums where I was just like, I don't know, I was just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of have since then I've that's kind of been my approach into making records and making songs. I don't necessarily go in with the destination, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
As far as cues, I know a lot of people have like, well, this song's going to be rock. This song's going to, or this
Sure.
song's going to be, have this kind of feel to it. Which I think is a blessing and a curse, because the curse being is like nobody knows how to put me in a box to market me. So I've kind of got under the skin of a lot of record label people because they don't know what to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing about that is I like that because I love and I am inspired by everything, like literally like world music to hip hop to metal, whatever. I love it
Mm-hmm.
all. And I don't know. I don't ever want to kind of get to that point where it's like, oh, he sounds like this all the time or whatever. So I
Right.
think when I made To Become Immortal and Die, I just wanted to kind of say, this is what I sound like, love me or hate me. And who knows what I'm going to sound like on the next record. So I kind of want to keep that open-ended sort of vibe with my sound. So that
Sure.
was my first attempt at it. And I hope it started something cool.
Right on. Well, so after you put that record out, did you tour on the album or like how
Yes,
did that
yeah, I
work?
did. Yeah, that was actually the last, obviously the last kind of major scale tour I did, which is weird because I did the tour for that album, uh, and I intentionally set aside the next year, which was 2019. This was the end of 2018 when I was having this whole mental thing in my head. I'm thinking, okay, I had a great tour, which was a great tour for the album, but I thought to myself, 2019 is coming up.
Mhm.
I'm gonna make a new record. I'm gonna dig down deep. I'm gonna take the year off the road, 2019. um, so I did it, and I made, which is now what became the Echoist that I put
Egoist,
out a
yeah.
couple months ago. And I did that, and then November of 2019, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to get back on the road. I played one show in December of 2019, and that was the last show I
Oh my
ever played.
gosh.
Yeah, and then
So,
the pandemic hit us a couple months later, and here we are.
so you played that show and then you were what looking to get, out on the road
Oh
again
yeah, yeah.
and
I
then everything
started already.
stopped.
Yeah, I started already talking to booking agents and about 2020. And I remember for the longest time, I think for like most of December, I was telling friends and associates, like business people and agents, I'm like, I got such a positive vibe about 2020. I think it's going to be a magical year. And
Everybody did.
yeah, I don't think it was just because the presentation 2020, it just looked cool and it just
Yeah.
sounded like, a
New
cool kind of year,
decade,
like
right, sure.
1984. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, little, I mean, obviously that's the most biggest understatement of the year. Little did we know, but man, I mean, it's one thing to have one thing where you're kind of like, you're in the music industry and everybody else keeps going. But it's
Right.
one thing when it's like literally the entire world stops, every industry.
Everybody.
And
Yeah.
yes, and we're still in the thick of it. And who knows how long this is gonna take us, or I know
Yeah.
they said that there was talk of maybe the music industry kind of getting back on track later this year, but I'm just now hearing about like Coachella and a lot of the festivals are canceling for the summer again.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
yeah,
they are
man, that
canceling next already for next
yeah,
year?
yeah, I heard it a couple days ago, and what that's actually what blew my mind in the beginning. I remember last year when a friend of mine came up to me and he was like, "Did you hear South by Southwest is canceled?" And of course, I thought he was joking.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, so it's coming up again. So it sounds to me like that if Coachella's canceled, I would imagine South by Southwest is probably
Oh,
canceled
yeah.
as well. So
I think I've heard like I was just talking to somebody right before you about this too. It was like October is when they're hopefully gonna let shows happen, but probably not to the scale. I mean, obviously to the
mm.
scale of Coachella, it's like what 200,000 people or something.
Oh
Like it's like
yeah,
100,000. I
and
think it's 90,000 a day or something like that, and that's three
yeah, and
days.
it's like
So
yeah, it's stretched out a little bit. Man, yeah, and then Bonnaroo too. That's the big thing we have here
mhm.
in Tennessee. I don't know, man. Yeah, like you said, it's probably going to be if they do anything, it might be like the crowd size might be dwindled down to who knows how many. But
Mhm.
I've heard all kinds of things from like like bubbles, not like actual like flaming lips bubbles, but like kind of like
Flaming lips
privacy,
bubbles. Sure. Yeah.
like privacy sort of boxes that you can sit in with your family or your friends or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but I don't know. I mean, that all sounds cool, but it also sounds really pricey and expensive. So I know
Right.
that there's some venues here in town already, smaller bars that back before COVID they would never charge cover, but now what they're doing is they're like 25 seat capacity, $15 a head,
Oh,
depending on
wow.
or ten
Yeah.
dollars a head. So
Mhm.
it's weird that those and you're like wow $15, but then again you think well I haven't saw a live band in a year,
Right,
you
right.
know.
$15 isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, think of all that money you saved not seeing that band.
Sure.
But yeah, man, it's who knows. We're still kind of figuring all this out.
Yeah, it's definitely a wild situation we're all in.
Yeah.
With the Echoist, that was so you wrote the whole record. It was done come beginning
hmm
of 2020.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I kind of actually had a different version of the album back then, a
Oh,
year ago,
interesting.
right now.
So
Yeah,
you were
actually
able
about
to
a
like
year.
revamp it like over the course of the 2020?
Yeah, well, it was kind of funny because the two singles that came out first were songs that were made in 2020. Because I was telling somebody not long ago, I think it's one of those things like being a songwriter, which I don't know if you can relate or not, but it's just like it's hard. At least it is for me. It's hard to keep my mouth shut. Like when it comes to things like social causes and things that are going on in the news or whatever.
Right.
So so yeah, so as we went into 2020, my thing is I was gonna release the album in the summer of 20, and obviously that didn't happen. I had to put it off till November. But uh, as soon as the lockdown happened, because in Nashville we went through tornadoes. We had a really bad tornado about 2 weeks before the COVID,
I know it's been
outbreak.
rough there. I mean, you had
Oh
that, and
yeah,
then COVID, and then the bombing, which I hope
hell
you were.
yeah.
Were you? I don't know how close you were to that, but I hope
Yeah,
that
I'm
you're.
about 4 miles from that location. Thankfully though, I wasn't actually, because it was Christmas. I wasn't home. I was in. I
Oh,
have
in
parents that
Ohio.
live. Well, no,
Oh,
I actually have parents that live a little north of here now. They moved here since. So I was at their house, but I had my neighbors telling me that they felt and they could physically feel the
that's
shake when that bomb
crazy.
hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
yeah, that was crazy too. So yeah, it's been a weird year. Um, but yeah, so I just remember getting to at the beginning of the pandemic, and then right when that happened, the civil unrest hit, the Black Lives Matter protests, and then
Mm-hmm.
obviously COVID. So there's so much going on. So it's just like me being me. I just can't sit and watch television and say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and I wrote a couple songs kind of inspired by everything. And so I was like, well, I got to put these on the album, because
Mm-hmm.
I've never been, which I admire people who can, but I've never been one of those kind of political protest singer songwriter things,
Sure.
which is great. I admire the people that can do that. But like when I wrote these songs, I'm like, wow, this is kind of like that. It's kind of like my attempt at doing that. And so I put the songs out, and sort of in my attempt to be topical, I suppose, because
Mm-hmm.
I seldom am ever a topical songwriter. So I went back and reshuffled the album, added these two songs, took away a couple other songs. So yeah, who knows what's going to happen to all the extra tracks? But yeah, I ended up coming down to 8 songs to where the album flowed a little cool and seemed to be encompass those two new songs. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then, have you been working on aside from that? Have you been working on anything else coming up?
Yeah, I'm I'm in the midst right now. I've probably been writing probably since around Christmas, and I'm upwards of about 20 or so new ideas I'm kind of in the studio with right now. So
That's
I do have an
awesome.
album that's actually done, but I'm not sure what's going to happen, because it's kind of a weird album. It's kind of there's a lot of instrumentals on it, and it's not one of
Okay.
those albums I'm going to release and it's just going to be like, skyrocketing to the top of fame and blow the world
You never know,
open. It's
though.
just one of the artsy albums that I'm not sure anybody will get. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of set that on the shelf for a minute, and I'm working on some new stuff. So we'll see. I'd like to have something out maybe by the end of the year. If anything, maybe an EP or a couple singles.
Awesome. That's really awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, thank you for having me. It's great.
Yeah, I have one more question for you before I let you go.
Mhm.
I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Um, Try to find something else. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm just joking. No, I don't. I think the biggest thing is listen to everybody, even if it's crazy. Listen to what everybody has to say. People that came before you, so to speak. Listen to what they say. Take advice, and have thick skin. That's probably the biggest thing, because the thing is, here's the thing. I always look at this. Not everybody in the world loves Elvis. Not everybody in the world loves the Beatles, but there's some people that could probably argue against that. I mean, like, well, they
Right.
did pretty well. So just because somebody doesn't dig you or like you doesn't mean that your career is useless or it's over for you out of the gate. So you just have to go with that, man. You're always know that your music's never going to everybody. But if you can connect with a handful of people, then mission accomplished. So pave your own path and have thick skin. That's probably the two biggest things I could suggest.
Bringing it backward.